I'm Leo Fuchs. I'm the principal at Learning Without Limits, one of the partnership charter schools in the district. And I heard that there was going to be a discussion tonight about average teacher salaries. I heard that from a number of principals that I'm still in touch with. The idea of a centralized staffing formula is in many ways worse than average teacher salaries. But I just want to say that the folks that I'm still in touch with definitely do not want to move to average teacher salaries. They do not want to move to a centralized staffing formula because it is a move that runs directly against the work that we did when we held the All Schools, All Kids, Our Decisions campaign. It runs against equity. It runs against what's strategic for improving academic performance for students. I believe, and many of the principals who I know who are still both elementary and secondary principals in the district believe strongly, as do the parents and teachers that in their communities, that decisions should be made by those closest to the kids. And one of the most significant decisions that we can make are how many teachers do we want? Who do we want those teachers to be? Which is more of a staffing decision, I acknowledge, than a budget decision. Do we want more people in the office or do we want more people doing intervention? Do we need a school security officer? Or do we need somebody who's going to be tutoring our kids? Do we need more after-school staff? Do we want to pay teachers more in order to do work with students after school? Do we want to pay them to collaborate? These kinds of things are vital decisions for us to be making at the school site. And just to speak for a moment to what the impact is both in real terms and hypothetically, at a school like ours where 97% of students receive free and reduced price lunch, turnover is higher because the work is frankly harder. There are more students with greater need, and that means that teachers have more work to do. So because turnover is higher, you have in schools that serve largely Title I students, much lower average teacher salaries. Let's say $40,000. Whereas in more schools that serve more affluent students, you have more retention. And so you have teachers with just hypothetically $70,000 average salaries. Students come with $5,000 apiece, let's just say. We know it's not the exact number, but you take that money and you use that to get your teachers. And then you say, okay, well, instead of paying $40,000 for the $40,000 teacher and $70,000 for the $70,000 teacher, we're just going to pay $55,000 for all of them. And then everybody can have the same amount that's left over. But the reality is that that's stealing $15,000 from the children in the classroom of the teacher that costs $40,000. And it is almost certain that the teacher that gets $40,000 is likely, on average, to be serving a more vulnerable population. That's just morally wrong. We should be sending money to the schools according to what kids are supposed to get. We can't start saying we're going to take that away, and we're going to give money to schools after we've already allocated staff. It's wrong. It also makes it impossible to do the level of intervention and level of professional development that we need for teachers who serve more vulnerable students, and really for any teacher who's new. Even in the more affluent schools, when there's a teacher who has less experience, we need to provide intervention for those students too, and we need to provide professional development for those teachers too to better support those students. But you're going to have way more of those teachers in schools that serve more vulnerable students. And so it hurts my heart that we have come so far, and we are a district that has made a huge step in terms of equity by having a results-based budgeting policy that has money follow students, and that we are so seriously considering moving away from that. And so those are my thoughts.
So, Mr. Fuchs, just ask you a question. So you've been in the district for quite some time.
14 years.
So the issue of equity is real. I mean, I think that the board is trying to grapple with. So in your example, that was an example that was particular to your school. In a school like Parker Elementary that one could argue that similar demographics, perhaps even a greater distress, both in the neighborhood and in the households. And yet that school is staffed with more senior teachers and barely makes its budget and draws on the balancing pool. So where's the equity in that? How do we resolve that
I think
dilemma?
that's a really fair and great question. Let me just say my example is a hypothetical.
Sure.
A real world example would be the one that's in the Ed Trust West report from 2004, 2005 that says that schools like the Jefferson campus had $180,000 per year taken from the school and sent, frankly, up the hill to schools serving more affluent students. That's documented, and I highly would request that you check that out. As far as Parker goes, I think that we have to make sure not to address dysfunction by layering on additional dysfunction. I think that there is an issue there of teacher quality and support. I'm not sure what Parker's current student achievement data looks like.
It's a 850 plus API.
So that's pretty good.
Better than yours.
Much better. And so that suggests that something's working. And that I think that it's a more difficult example when you have expensive teachers and achievement is low. I don't think it's such a tough example when achievement is high, because you don't need those extra dollars for professional development and intervention, because the theory is when teachers get more senior, they don't need as much of that support, so it's okay that the money goes into teacher salaries. I think you have a greater problem at schools where achievement is low and salaries are high. And there are schools like that. And I think that in those circumstances, it's a matter of how we evaluate teacher quality and whether we don't have a shared definition of teacher quality. And that's really the dysfunction that needs to be addressed so that we can compensate folks according to quality, however we land on that scenario. But I'm not worried about schools that have fewer discretionary resources if their students are achieving. I think that student achievement needs to be at the center.
Meaning that Parker could be it's okay for Parker to be financially stressed because they are achieving.
I think that our number one concern should be student achievement. So we need to make sure that.
But so as you mentioned, there's a lot of different factors. Well, I won't. We can talk offline
Okay.
about this. So
Okay.
I don't have anybody else any questions. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.